And that was the moment where it clicked, where it hit me, where I was like, this is who I am. This is what I'm meant to do, is to work with healing, to work with plant medicines, and then bring that level of healing that I received to support other people in their healing process, to be that bridge for the plants to help other people.
You're listening to the Feed Your Wild podcast, a conscious lifestyle show about all things nourishing for your body, mind, and soul. I'm Vanessa Rodriguez, and join me for candid conversations with changemakers, exploring health and wellness, food as medicine, intuition and spirituality, and nature-based practices that will transform your health and feed all parts of your wild self. Hey there, welcome back to Feed Your Wild. This is Vanessa Rodriguez, and before we dive into today's episode, I just wanted to step in and give you a quickie reminder about the Feed Your Wild Gut workshop that's coming up August 26th, but pre-sale pricing is available only until July 29th. So if you were interested, and this is for anybody who is experiencing any kind of gut-related issues like IBS, GERD, acid reflux, constipation, bloating, have a history of any of this, have family members that might have any of these issues, or brain-related issues that are associated with gut dysbiosis, this is for you. It's the Feed Your Wild Gut virtual workshop, mapping the wild terrain of your gut health. It's a 3-hour live virtual wisdom circle. However, it will be recorded. So if you can't make it live, that's okay. You will get the recording and you can watch it anytime. It's a virtual interactive workshop really designed to reclaim the wild resilience and the robust health of our second brain, our gut terrain. We're going to be covering a lot in this one, including all of the functional nutrition aspects of it, like anatomy, physiology, and the practical solutions, and what I use in my own clinical practice with testing, what tests to actually use and what we're looking for, but also really mapping out gut health as it relates to mental, emotional, energetics, and spiritual aspects of health. It's really important that we're looking at these things in a really holistic way on all these various levels, because I see so much imbalance coming from a lot of these more energetic and soul level issues. So we are diving into that too. If you are interested, now's the time to check it out. The link will be in the show notes, and you can also go to my website at wildlyrooted.com. And at the very top, there's going to be a bar where you can click and it'll take you to the website where you can learn more and register and join us. It's going to be a good group. In this episode, I'm really excited to be speaking with Whitney Popham of the School of Evolutionary Herbalism. And Whitney and her husband, Seja, are kind of like our neighbors. They're located here in Southern Oregon, and it's just been incredible to meet all of the wonderful healers and teachers that are in this area. It's really cool how many there are. And Whitney is one of them. She's an herbal practitioner and educator. And today we talk about her journey of self-discovery, healing, and her life's calling to the plant path. We dive deep right away into how we got into this mess and this point of disconnection from these ancient systems of medicine, and we explore ways that we can begin to reclaim that connection. Whitney shares her own experience with healing trauma by building relationships with plants and their medicine on all levels, and provides us with a beginner's roadmap to using botanicals for supporting the nervous system and the heart. And we have a special note from Whitney because we discuss using botanicals and harvesting plants ourselves. So she wanted to emphasize the importance of, before you harvest or make any medicine from any herb, it's imperative that you first properly identified that plant before you ingest it or give it to anyone else. So learning some basic botany, getting a good ID book, or taking a class with a local herbalist are all really important steps toward making sure that you're safely harvesting and using herbs. So make sure that you're doing that before you start. I hope you enjoy our exploration of the magical and magnetic power of plants as teachers and healers. Enjoy. Whitney Popham is an herbal practitioner and educator, pollinating the medicine of the plants to bring healing and beauty into the world. She's devoted her life to being a humble vessel for the plants to touch people's lives and do their healing work through her. As a clinical herbalist, she facilitates healing on the emotional, spiritual, and physical levels of health through the multifaceted lens of plant medicine, nutrition, and Ayurvedic lifestyle coaching. She's the co-founder of the School of Evolutionary Herbalism, where her and her husband Seja have trained and empowered tens of thousands of people to become herbalists and practitioners. Through their online programs and live workshops, they share wisdom from multiple medical traditions from around the world to continue the legacy of bringing healing to people, culture, and planet. Whitney, thank you so much for being on the show.
Oh, thank you, Vanessa. It's an honor to be here.
The name of your school is the School of Evolutionary Herbalism. So I'm curious, could you touch on what is evolutionary herbalism? What does that mean for you and your mission?
Yeah. So the way we're looking at it is evolutionary herbalism is kind of a basis of looking at where we've come. And so honoring all of the different ancestral traditions of plant medicine and healing that we have available to us at this time. I mean, there's so many different traditions that we have access to learn and study. And some of those for us have been Ayurveda and medical astrology, the tradition of alchemy from Europe, and Chinese medicine, and different North American traditions of herbalism and healing, and European. And so through all of our studies, and speaking of my husband, Seja, and myself, we've seen that common thread of where there are these universal patterns that all ancient people who lived close to the earth understood. And thus their healing traditions were developed out of this deep, intimate connection with nature. And so what we're doing is trying to speak to that common thread that is universal. And then also, as far as the evolutionary piece, it's like gathering up those gems of wisdom and then continuing to bring that forward into today, and far as looking at also the biochemical approach to plant medicine that we have gone through these different eras of herbalism. You know, there's kind of more the direct perception, indigenous traditions, and then have moved into energetic approach, which would be kind of looking at different constitutions of people. And so systems like Ayurveda and such, and Galenic or Greek medicine, and then moving into the biochemical realm of herbalism, which is very constituent based and focuses on the chemistry side of plant medicine and people. And so just honoring that there's wisdom within all of these different eras of healing and modalities of healing and all of these different eras of herbalism, and then looking at how can we gather that, and then also moving forward, how can we also work with plant medicines on the soul level of our growth and evolution? So beyond just healing our bodies, but also looking at how can we work with plant medicines from a soul level, evolutionary level, where we're also evolving our consciousness along with healing our bodies, because our whole modality and philosophy of healing is based on all of nature and the wholeness of the person and the wholeness of the plant and the wholeness of how we're in relationship to the whole earth, as well as the stars, because we also work with astrology too. So it's kind of this very broad encompassing modality, I would say, or philosophy, but that's kind of like, we look at evolutionary herbalism as similar to how evolutionary astrology, like that same kind of model of looking at not just our health on our bodies, but also the health in our minds, our hearts, and our path as human beings on this earth at this time. So it's kind of, we're trying to bring it into something bigger than just looking at how we can heal our bodies.
And I believe you guys are doing it in a way that weaves it so beautifully. I mean, these are really big and pretty complex systems that you guys are bringing together. And being able, as you were saying, to find those through lines, those patterns, the essence of it, to relearn. Because I feel like, as you were talking, it makes me think about nutrition and nourishment, and as a nutritionist, like there's the way that you can learn nutrition that's very, I guess you would call it like allopathic and body only and counting macros and all that stuff, where it isn't really nourishment, that's more like a science-based nutrition and not even like a very deep science, but like where is the relationship and the evolution within that? So I think it's so critical, the work that you guys are doing right now in sharing that. It makes me wonder, knowing where we are today, and some of the, like what we're speaking to, like the emptiness of some of these teachings that like don't go into the depths of all that we really are. How did we get here? I'm curious what your thoughts are on that trajectory of like humans and our relationship to plants, even in the plant world.
Yeah, I think about this a lot because, well, gosh, this is a really deep, huge,
right
huge
away, right?
topic here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the thing is I guess when at the root of it, and I know this might sound really simplistic, but really honestly, at the root of it, to me, in my perception, it's like most of the problems that we're having right now on a planetary level, and then also personally within our health and things like that, there comes from this, it stems from that disconnection from the earth and from a more simple way of living in connection with nature. And it's something that if you just look at, gosh, it's like we could really go there and look at all of the different problems, but I'm sure people listening here are aware of, the things that are going on, on our earth. But like one of the ways, just in regards to, food, for example, it's like one of the most common things that I see in my clinical practice is digestive issues. People will have a lot of difficulty with digestion, for example. And it's like, look at our agricultural system, and our food system is one of the big sick areas, I guess I would say, or areas that it's like a lot of people don't have a connection to their food or where it comes from. And a lot of our food is being farmed on such a massive scale where it's devoid of a lot of essential nutrients. And then you can see the cascade of physiological effects from that. And then, the trauma that's having to land and to, the communities and cultures around massive agriculture. I mean, that's just one little lens of it, right? But you can also look at that with our medical system too, right? So there's just all of these ways that things have gotten kind of distorted. And I mean, a lot of it has to come from, I guess, maybe trying to make things easier. One of my friends was saying maybe at one point our ancestors, like it was so hard to actually work the land and to really live self-sufficiently and really, maybe they had that prayer for us, for the next generations. Maybe they were hoping that life would be easier for us. And in some ways, things are definitely easier for us, and that we have food and water, and really, like many people, at least in the United States, many people have a lot of the basic essentials that they need, provided for them as far as just showing up without having to actually work the land and farm or go and gather food or go and gather your own water or things like that. However, there's that disconnection piece. And I feel like that's a huge amount of the sickness that we have on the planet today and within our own bodies, because we really aren't separate from the earth. And I know that sounds super cliche, but it's really true. When you get down to it, if you look at Chinese medicine or Ayurveda, for example, they have these very, like the maps of the human body they're more like gardens, and their whole framework and even very sophisticated medical, framework and understanding for the human body is really, they're talking about it more like an ecosystem rather than a machine. So that's kind of a difference, like in our Western world today, we have a very machine-minded way of, an extractive mindset that's kind of gotten us into a lot of these problems. So one of the ways that plant medicine to me is incredibly profound at this time is that plant medicine, this is one of the reasons I was so drawn to it, is that it has a capacity. It's like to not only take care of healing those things in our bodies, but when that happens, there's also a huge perception shift because, maybe if you've relied on going to the pharmacy or the doctor or your whole life, and I have nothing against those. I have been to the hospital. I've received help from doctors before, and it's, I definitely honor that we have incredible, powerful pharmaceutical drugs that can save lives. I definitely don't want to discount that. However, there is also a perception that can be awakened when you work with a plant medicine. If you are healed by something that grew out of the earth, it's like it awakens this whole world of realizing, oh my gosh, nature really does have our backs. Like there's medicine you start to see, when I first was in my first herbal apprenticeship, I looked all around. Suddenly I was discovering that there were medicinal plants everywhere I walked. Everywhere there was something that could help me with some sort of ailment. And so it's like it has this capacity to rekindle our trust that nature has an intelligence and this trust that we're a part of this earth, that we're home, that this is home, and that there are remedies and foods available to us all the time to help us, and so through that perception shift that can happen, it can kind of pull us out of that mindset where we're just, I guess, in that same kind of mindset that has gotten us into this place as far as that disconnection place, because it heals that connection with nature, which is a huge part of what we need right now. So I'm not sure if that answers your question as far as how, but it's a really deep thing, again, that we could go really into, but that's just a part of how plant medicine, in my opinion, and growing your own food, or, finding out where your watershed is, like where you live, finding out where the water is and going and drinking water from those places, or just getting to actually be a part of where you live and these essential foundational elements that give you life every day. If you can reconnect to your food source, your water, and your medicine source, I mean, that is a huge, that in itself can just be a huge healing for people.
Whitney, oh my gosh, there is so much there that you just touched on. One of the things that stands out for me is just how blinded we've become through this disconnection. And, I think there's a lot more to it. Along with the disconnection, there's also sort of like the co-opting, for the sake of making money, like marketing and all of that, that there are agendas that want to keep certain things hidden. And for example, the fact that most pharmaceuticals come from plants, right? Like the constituents are derived from plants, and that meant that somebody had to go, into most likely the Amazon rainforest and work with plants and learn about how these plant medicines can help people, and then how to take that back and rearrange it and put it into a pharmaceutical, which can, yes, save lives, but that there's that disconnection that most people, that walk around today don't know that. And so with that, and food for that matter, like you were speaking, that food is coming from the earth. Being in Chicago, I had a lot of friends who worked in communities that were, they had lower access or lower income and didn't really know where their food came from, didn't even know different kinds of foods. They weren't able to identify various kinds of foods because they didn't have access to it. There was such a severe disconnection. So, I love that you're bringing that back, repairing that connection. And to me, it's like the relationship, like rebuilding our relationship of home and like who we are and where we come from.
Yeah. I mean, there are a lot of economic and social and, injustices and so many layers to that, as far as, a lot of people are even just struggling to survive, just to have a roof over their head and everything, that they might not even have the bandwidth to think about, extra, or have like even a little tiny yard to be able to grow their own food. So there's a lot here that is definitely a part of the whole picture,
Yeah. I know that we dived really deep right in the beginning, but I kind of want to back it up a little bit, because I would love for you to share your story. What got you started on the plant path? Like, where did it begin for you?
Yeah, that's so there are many different layers to it, and I think looking back now, I can see the different eras of my life or different pieces that came in. But just to start out, I grew up on a little island in off the coast of Northwest Washington, and I was super blessed. I didn't even realize, how blessed I was to have grown up in a place that was just really in nature, and with a very small community, a lot of people that really cared about each other and kind of watched out for each other. But my mom was a midwife and then became a nurse, and she always had an interest in natural remedies and things like that, because she saw that kind of corruption of the medical industry in some ways, but worked within it to want to be helpful to people too. So I grew up, it started out, I would say my plant path started out when I was little, just foraging around in the woods and just picking leaves and berries and all kinds of things out of the garden, and stealing my mom's mortar and pestle and grinding all of the stuff up in it and making different mishmashes of stuff that I think was just some maybe ancestral memory or some like part of my soul that always was just drawn to that, making these concoctions and things. And then, we used different simple natural remedies growing up, like different herbs. And I grew up, my mom taught me how to identify certain herbs that were, for instance, like plantain was one that really stuck out to me. I was like, okay, I know plantain, not the banana, but the little herb plantago, lanceolata as one of the Latin name for it. But it's like I grew up knowing how to, okay, if someone gets a bee sting or if I get a bee sting, I can pick this and chew it up and the swelling and the pain will go away. And, so things like that were a part of my life. And I didn't really think of it as anything unusual. And I didn't even know that there was such a thing as an herbalist. It was just, kind of a part of my life. And then when I was in high school, I remember really starting to getting interested in herbalism as well. I had a rotator cuff injury from skateboarding, and I had started making plantain poultices for myself. And it was like this new world kind of opened up for myself to feel empowered. And wow, this remedy could, maybe help to heal the torn tissues or things like that. So I just started then rummaging around in my mom's bookshelf and starting to read about herbs and things like that. And I thought it was really cool. But then something else that really clicked in for me was when I was in high school. I was really into activism, and I wanted to change the world, and I started to feel the heaviness and the injustice of the world. And as I started to become more aware of different issues that were happening in the world, I wanted to do something about it. And so I guess I'm giving you the really long version of my story.
This is good.
But yeah, my friends and I formed a student activism group, and I got a grant to fly to a conference in Washington, D.C. And I was over there and with all these other activists, all these other students, and it was really incredible and empowering. But something clicked for me in that time there, that someone did a anti-oppression training, and just really kind of hit me on a really deep level how angry I was, how much was turmoil I felt inside of me and trauma and things like that. And it was like I realized that if I wanted to change the world, I had to heal myself. And that was the big light bulb that went on. And so after that, I realized I kind of funneled my effort and my energy into the healing path, because I realized if I wanted to actually have integrity behind, I would go to peace rallies and anti-war protests and things like that. And then I was going at home and arguing with my sister. And it was like, I was just realizing kind of the level of integrity of what we hold inside of ourselves and internally and within our own families and within our communities. It's like the change really ripples out from there. And so I had to take responsibility for my own healing. And that's what really got me into studying a lot of different healing modalities. But then herbalism eventually also was one that really came through. Particularly, I went through a lot of trauma and just really a lot of struggle in my early 20s. And that was something that plant medicine, it was like somehow came through as a prayer. It was like the plants just started showing up, different teachers, and it was something that touched me and moved me in a really deep way, that I started to receive a lot of healing from different health problems that I was having. And some of them were also, I had health problems that were created by going to doctors and getting put on antibiotics and medications, things that I realized I wanted to feel empowered in my health by working with plants, and seemed like a very easy way to do that, because I could literally go out in my yard and I could find a remedy that could help me, and it started to heal me. And then I realized I wanted to devote my life to helping other people heal, because I experienced healing not just in my physical body, but then also just emotionally. And then it really opened up a whole spiritual path for me too. So I just felt this deep spiritual connection to the plants, and just experiencing how everything is alive and all of nature is alive, and feeling that connection to nature that way through the plants as those gateways. So yeah, there are many different kind of, I guess, layers to it. But one thing that really was interesting is when I was little, I wanted to be a florist, because I thought like that was the only way I'd seen people really work with plants. and I just had that like remembrance one time when I was just a handful of years ago out harvesting and picking all of these yarrow flowers, and it just clicked on me. I was like, wow, I'm doing what I always wanted to do, which is working with flowers and plants and beauty, because healing is also beauty. There's a lot of hardship, but it's also beautiful. And so it felt like it kind of came full circle as my purpose became revealed to me through the years.
I love that it was almost like you had to go through a process where you stepped away from like the flowers and the plants, not fully, but to find that that sense of purpose and that anger and like going through all those emotions, and really feeling so that you can understand on a deeper level the power of healing for yourself and for something that's bigger than you. I don't know. I felt that within my own story too. And that kind of resonated as you were speaking about it. Was like, sometimes I look back and I'm like, why did I have to go through that? But then when I tune in and it's like, wow, that really opened doors that couldn't have been opened otherwise. And so I'm curious, talking about doors opening, were there any particular plants or one specific plant that you can remember that sort of opened another door for you, or one of the first ones in this, you walking into this plant path?
Yeah. And I guess just before I jump into that, to kind of just go off of what you were saying too, I feel like that that herbalism in a sense is that like healing basically all of those things that are going on in the world. It's like at the root of it, we just need healing. It's like if we can heal what's going on within ourselves, our families, our ancestry and lineages, it's like if that healing happens, the world is going to change, because we can't keep repeating the same destructive patterns over and over that are causing harm to ourselves or other people. So there's so much that's kind of a part of how I feel like the activism aspect of my calling is continuing in that way. And yeah, to answer your question about a particular plant for me, and every herbalist or anybody who works with plants in that way will all have a story that is a certain plant that really opened things up for them. And everyone, the way that they talk about them, it's just so beautiful, because it's like they're friends, or like, they're just really close friends in a way, or allies, because they've helped them through something really challenging. For me, I had come out of a really unhealthy, abusive, and destructive relationship when I was 20, and I was really at a place where I was like, I don't know what to do with my life. And I felt like everything had gotten kind of like broken down and kind of burned away, as far as just my whole structure of, it was just in that complete place of just unknowing about my path or what I was doing, and felt like I really needed healing. And I signed up for this little herbalism apprenticeship, and it was just to do something, and because I thought it sounded kind of interesting, but I didn't really realize it was going to take hold of me in such a huge way. But that was with Suzanne Jordan with the Cedar Mountain Herb School, and she's up in Mount Vernon, Washington. And I had different health problems that were reflecting what was also going on emotionally for me. I had stopped, my moon cycles had stopped, so I wasn't menstruating or anything for a while. And it was kind of like this whole shutdown of the feminine. Like I felt like my power had been stripped away. I felt like I was just really weak. And I was, getting to know different plants through this apprenticeship, and we'd focus on one herb a week, and we'd spend time out, in the gardens or in, the mountains. And when I met motherwort, it was like something hit me in such a huge way. And it was like, I remember the teacher talking about how it's kind of like a mother's love and all this stuff, like this kind of caring, nurturing plant. And motherwort is an incredible nervine, for helping to calm and soothe anxiety and stress, which I had a lot of that anxiety. But then also it works around the female reproductive system with helping to bring on menses. And so I was like, wow, well, I'm going to try this, and my teacher let me dig up some of the motherwort from her garden. And so I took it home and I planted it in my garden, and I harvested some of it from her garden that she had grown there. And I made a tincture. It was like, I think it was the first tincture I ever made too. So it's this incredible process of just getting to connect with this plant, but really Vanessa, like I can't even describe just the feeling that I had when I was around this plant is just kind of gives me chills because it was just felt like a homecoming in a way, like something in my heart was just able to relax, and I just felt safe and I felt like at ease, which is such a huge thing. People have post-traumatic stress. It's like just to feel safe is a big thing, in the world. And so, that was just incredible. I just started to feel this just connection to this plant. And the Latin name for motherwort is Leonurus cardiaca, which is the lion-hearted. And it's incredibly strengthening to the heart. And I just started to feel this strength. It was like a soul retrieval almost, like the feminine, this quality of this like strong, resilient woman came back into me. And it was like the life started to flood back into my body and my heart, and my moon courses came on. I started bleeding again, and I started having regular cycles and everything. It was like so fast how rapid the healing was for me. And I was just so blown away to experience healing like that from a plant, and one that I could grow in my garden and I could connect with. And then also to, it just was a huge awakening for me. And then to just see the response in my body. And then I remember after going through this intimate, deep healing process with motherwort, I was in this garden where there was just tons of motherwort everywhere, this huge patch. And it was like, I was seeing my friend, and I just remember standing there and I just had my hands like right around the plants, just standing there in this huge patch of motherwort and feeling so completely content and like I was in my element. Like that is exactly where I needed to be. And that was the moment where it clicked, where it hit me, where I was like, this is who I am. This is what I'm meant to do, is to work with healing, to work with plant medicines, and then bring that level of healing that I received to support other people in their healing process, to be that bridge for the plants to help other people.
Oh my God, I have so many chills right now listening to your story, Whitney. It's incredible. Gosh, I don't even know where to start. Like feeling it in my heart and feeling how this plant and the essence of what you were speaking about, the power of these plants are allies in healing all sorts of trauma, especially now with the feminine, and what's going on and the disheartening that has happened, that disconnection from the heart of like humans and Mother Earth, just how much we really need these plants and this reconnection in this time. Also, I cannot tell you how many people reach out to me seeking out resources for healing trauma. So whether it's personal, familial, ancestral, intergenerational, right? Like past life, you name it. And I feel that it's also related to a topic that I know that you speak about, which is the age of loneliness. So could you speak to the power of plants as allies? Like you just told us this incredible story about how it was for you. How do you see working with our plant allies for healing trauma today and why they're so critical?
Yeah, just to kind of add a little piece about just a little correction the age of loneliness, I just want to give credit to my friend Mila Prince for that too. We came together and shared a class together about this, but that specific, I know that's a term that is used by, oh gosh, I can't remember exactly who it was that she was sourcing that name to call the Anthropocene, to describe the Anthropocene, the specific geological age that we're in now, which is a whole thing that, that she's been sharing. And then through doing our class together, we kind of talked about this together. So I just want to give credit for that and acknowledge that is part of what the work I've done with her. But healing trauma, honestly, I feel like most humans right now have a low level of PTSD. And one of the things about that is that we can look at trauma in many different ways. There's, specific, like very acute, very obvious traumas. If someone goes to war or someone has gone through a really intense physical injury, or, there's just so many layers to it. But one of them that I just want to speak to is that maybe a more subtle layer, which is that so many humans don't feel like they even have a place on this earth. There are First Nations people that were kicked out of their own homelands and ancestral lands. And then you have many of us settler people that came to the United States, to this Turtle Island as this not being our native land, and then living on occupied land. So there's that, there's many different layers of that. But then there's also that many people just, it's a really kind of messed up thing in a sense, like too, that we have to work and make money and to have a certain level of affluence to be able to buy land, to then finally feel like we could have a place solid to live under our feet. So that in itself is just a huge thing, is like, if you don't feel like you have a place that's a home, that maybe your family has tended for a long time, that's something that's, I think, just this low level of that in the back of your mind, even if you don't even think of it, that just this feeling of like, gosh, is there a place where I can just totally be safe and totally let go and totally root into this land here and feel like what I plant here is going to continue and to nourish other generations beyond me or other people, or I think that is one level of it that is, I think, one of the ways that we can remedy that, because that comes into that disconnection piece too, right? So working with plant medicines is one way that, I mean, honestly, I feel like as much as you can, just getting your hands in the soil, actually growing your own herbs. I know that might be a luxury for some people, but even if you have, like, put some pots of herbs, if you don't have a yard, or just that is one way that we can help to heal that connection. Because, I can also share specific plant allies that have helped me and other allies that I work with people around trauma. But I think it's kind of a bigger thing that we have to look at too, is the reconnection piece, because we have a mindset too that, like, if I take this specific herb, it's going to heal this thing with me, which is the same mindset we use with allopathic medicine or drugs. It's like, if I take this thing, it's going to do this for me. And there's a little bit of a disempowered, that can encourage some disempowered, I guess, thinking, So I feel like a part of the biggest healing is you yourself finding maybe what particular herbs were used by your ancestral, like, people. Maybe your people have a strong connection to nettles. Like, I have come from people from Northern Europe, and that's a really foundational plant to those people. And then finding a way to grow those herbs around you, maybe, or go and find where they grow, and just connecting like that, I think, is the biggest piece. If I was going to get more specific into, I would say, like, one of the first levels of healing trauma is, I feel like, working around the nervous system and the heart. So any plant allies that can help to just support the nervous system, like milky oat seed is one that's incredible. Avena sativa is its Latin name. And just those restorative nervine herbs that can just help us to calm down and relax. And that is one way that if we actually can relax, even if it's not something that you're conscious of feeling stressed out or anything, there's probably a low level of holding, So if there's trauma there and you are looking for healing, just thinking about maybe working with plant allies like skullcap or milky oats or holy basil, or, if it's tension around the heart, like that motherwort can help to relax and soothe the heart to open. Linden is another plant ally I love for just soothing and calming the heart itself so it can open. And then the heart is really the area, as far as like our emotional heart, that's really the area where so much of our trauma and memory can be stored, is in that emotional memory, which is stored in that emotional heart. So I love working with plants like rose is a deep, ally of mine. I love working with wild rose in particular because it holds this rugged feminine that's like has lots of thorns, and it's not all bred to be just like plumped up and juicy with tons of petals. It's just like kind of simple and rugged and thorny. And I feel like that's also a part of that healing, like you were talking about, for the feminine that we need too. That wild rose can be a really incredible ally like that. So those are just a few of the herbs and the way that I would approach it, because that opening of the heart is where then it's like kind of the floodgates can open, or the healing can start happening, and it just gets things moving. And same thing with the nervine herbs, just those herbs that can help to soothe and open, so that then the healing just starts to move and happen.
It's interesting, and thank you for bringing up that you don't have to go straight to the mind and think, okay, what do I need for this particular, what remedy do I need for this particular ailment? And that what's most important is getting connected in any way that we can. One way, as you were speaking, I was reminded of, for me, is an early morning nature walk. Like, I'll go with my neighbor, who was my first friend when I moved here, and we'll walk. And one thing that I noticed throughout this season was how profoundly the smell of wild rose impacted me. And just the smell, like walking past and noticing, what is that smell? I never smelled that in Chicago. This is so lovely and beautiful. And then every day, going past it every day, like it going deeper into my senses, and like feeling like I was building a relationship with this plant through its smell and its gift, that it was like saying hi to me, And in that way, I felt like I really started to build a relationship with wild rose, and that was before I began, taking any kind of tincture or spagyric or anything like that. So I also want to encourage, I wanted to emphasize that, what you said, because I think that sometimes it's so easy to go into the mind. For example, like I think also related to the nervines and just our nervous system, how big adaptogens are now in the marketplace. And how, now everybody, you'll see like, oh, I need to take adaptogens because I'm so stressed out, right? So it's interesting to look at like, what is it that we're being really called toward, but then not just taking it prescriptively in that way, but really building a connection.
Yeah, and that's honestly, that's I think one of the most critical things that we need to be doing is reclaiming our connection to our instinctual nature and to our intuitive nature, and just trusting in that. I mean, I didn't know anything about, motherwort or anything, but then it just showed up, and then I got to learn about it and develop that relationship with it. But we have so much information available to us all the time right now. It can be easy to think of like, wow, that herb sounds amazing. Because really every plant is absolutely incredible, and especially some of those really powerful herbs that are getting a lot of attention, like the adaptogens, for example. But I feel like the message, I'm glad you're highlighting that, because that is, I think, one of the most important messages, is to recognize that you have a connection to plants, even if you don't feel like you do at this point in your life, that you come from an ancestry where, if you go far enough back, all of your ancestors used plant medicines, and they relied on plants for their health and for their food and everything. So if just trusting in that ancestral, intuitive, kind of instinctual wisdom, that those plants will come across your path. And it's like, you are literally, there's wild rose literally coming across your path as you were walking every day. And it's like, these people kind of pop up and show themselves to us, as far as just, oh, what's that? And you're going to notice something different than maybe your neighbor. Your neighbor might be noticing this other thing that's flowering and is super drawn to that.
I'm curious because I'm thinking about what stands in our way and some of the challenges that people face. And you and Seja have really taught and seen thousands of folks go through your programs and your work. I'm curious, what have you seen as some of the biggest challenges for people who are, first starting this path or starting to build that relationship?
Well, I think a lot of people have fear around as far as like becoming, like starting to help other people, I guess is what I'm thinking from your question. Is that what you
Yeah, let's go there.
mean?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, we have a lot of people that might be drawn to, like, they might be looking for healing for themselves, right? And so then they're just looking to educate and empower themselves with learning about herbalism to help themselves. But maybe what they don't realize is that it's infectious and it's going to, then they're going to start probably helping other people, even if it's just their family members with what they learn. And maybe somebody like that who's looking, I don't want to say just because it's very important, but somebody like that might be feeling kind of doubt around, will this even work? Like, do plants even really work? That's something that I went through when I was starting my first herbal apprenticeship. I was like, this is all cool, but does it really work? And then I like accidentally ate a food that I'm super allergic to and had an anaphylactic reaction, and then picked a whole bunch of plantain and ate it and took a tincture blend somebody gave me. And like within, 10, 20 minutes, my throat like relaxed and stopped closing up. So it's like, I was like, wow, plants actually can work even in serious emergencies. So yeah, somebody like that might be feeling doubt about wondering if it works. Or also there's a lot of people feel overwhelmed, right? So if they're just getting started, a lot of things we hear, it's like, oh my gosh, there's so much out there. There's so much information. I don't know, where do I even begin? So that's something, a challenge that a lot of people have. And then, specifically when you're getting into, we try to teach more of a constitutional model or a vitalist model, which is honoring that each person is unique, that we all have a different body type. We all have a different constitutional makeup. And so, we try to get more specific about herbalism and nutrition, and that it's tailored to each person's needs and their constitution, that what might be good for you might not be good for your neighbor or, your friend. You guys are going to have different body types. And so then when you start getting into the doshas or constitutions, then that can be confusing for people too. And they're trying to figure, oh my gosh, now you're not just giving me like, just herbs, but now I need to understand constitutions. So that can be overwhelming. But in the long run, it actually simplifies things because you start to just see the patterns, and that's easier to follow. And then for people that have experienced healing themselves with plants and they want to start helping other people, a huge fear or challenge that people have is, do I know enough? Am I competent enough to help someone? And I think a lot of people, because if you're called to be a healer and help people, you're really compassionate. You obviously don't want to hurt somebody. So there can be a lot of, I notice a lot of people hold themselves back out of that fear of making a mistake. So those are just, I would say, some of the big challenges that people have.
Yeah. And so in thinking of that, a lot of it can stem, like you were saying, just the fear. Like there are these kind of through lines with the various fears. I know that I definitely felt all of those things, when I started on my path too. What do you feel are some steps for people who want or are curious about this path or, the path of helping others in this way? What are some beginning steps that one can take to, to start working with plants in this way, but also to help themselves with these fears?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I mean, I would say in one respect, just to put some perspective on it, and just think about, maybe the first time that you learned how to ride a bike, it was the same thing that you're afraid and weren't sure if you're going to be able to do it. And just knowing that you, with practice and with patience, that you can overcome any challenge in your life, and so remembering that, first of all, and then I would say having patience, so that developing those relationships is really key. So a practical step, like just looking back at my own story, it was so empowering to plant that motherwort in my own garden and then to take care of it, to water it, to see what it looked like in the different seasons, to then harvest some of it and make my own tincture out of it and make my own medicine out of it, which is really, really simple and easy to do. There's so many herbal preparations that you can make that are just as simple as it's, almost like an extension of cooking, in a way, because probably all of our great, 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 great grandmothers at some point did just folk herbalism and just, and so it's also know that it's your birthright, that there are people far enough back in your ancestry that have done this at some point. And so it's also a part of just being human, and remember that. And then so specific steps, I feel like making your own medicine and getting to experience that plant is really, really helpful. So one of the things that I did when I was first starting to study herbs is I would just work with one herb at a time. And I would give myself about like 2 months to just take that one tincture or flower essence or whatever it was and I would go to sit with the plant, I really encourage people to start with herbs that are accessible to them and easy for them to connect with. It's like if you have dandelion growing in your yard, start there. You don't need chaga or like eleuthero or whatever the most exotic herb is from halfway across the world. You definitely don't need that. Like you can just start with what's growing in your yard and then spend time, just a little bit of time with it every day if you can, going into an intentional, like, okay, I'm going to take a month. The next month, I'm going to take this, dandelion flower essence and just spend 5 minutes, like just sitting there. And, you can meditate with that plant. You can just observe it, like how it is, as far as observe it in different seasons throughout the year. But when you take that tincture or flower essence, for example, or just some sort of, or drink a tea of that one plant for a few months or even a few weeks, if you have that amount of time, just a concentrated amount of time where you're doing that every day, then you'll really start to feel how that plant impacts your physiology. You'll feel maybe your tissues like change. You start to notice different effects. Maybe your digestion changes or something. You'll notice things going on in your body. But maybe you'll also start to have certain dreams, or you might start to have just healing. Oh my gosh, you might have like a certain healing, something with your dad that comes up, or whatever it is. Your life will start to reflect the way that plant is healing you, and it'll start to teach you about its medicine from a whole other way, So I encourage people to do that and take that time to get to know it. And also, then to study it too. So like take that time for you to maybe take that first month where you're just meditating and getting to know it yourself, and then read everything you can about it, after you've gotten some of your own time with it. Because I think that's something, it's easy to fill up our minds with information, but I really feel like it's, like I said earlier, developing your own connection is really essential. So that's one way. And then when you start to build those relationships, then some people will come into your life. It's like, oh my gosh, I have this going on. Can you help me? And then it's like, oh my gosh, that plant that I was just sitting with and studying is perfect for that. Let me help you. And I can, share this herb with you. So it kind of starts to magnetize. The people will start to come into your life, or family members or whatever it is, and they'll start asking you for help. And my experience, and I've heard a lot of other herbalists say this too, is that usually you start to bring in the people that come to you are usually have something similar that you've healed or gone through yourself. So then you have a little bit of footing to get started because you feel confident, like, wow, I know that motherwort can do this because I went through it and I experienced it, completely helping with this whole situation I had going on, and it healed that. So now I know, like, someone comes to me and they have the same sort of thing going on, that, oh, motherworts could be perfect for them, for that situation. So that's like it's just like anything. You start to build trust in it and you start to build belief in it because you experience it yourself. Then you start to see it helping the people in your life, and then it builds from there. But I think the main thing is just not to jump ahead of ourselves, not to jump ahead of yourself by, if there's somebody that comes and asks you for help and it's something that's way bigger, like, okay, then this person has cancer or something like that, make sure you have a resource of practitioners that you really trust and believe in that you can refer people to, because that's also a part of helping people, is that you could just, it doesn't necessarily mean that you are going to be the one to always give them the herbs or help them. That might be outside of your expertise. So you need to have that humility as well to recognize that maybe there's another practitioner of that you could refer them to get the level of healthcare that they need. So those are just a few steps as far as just thinking through, like, start with yourself and what's right in your yard, and then start to grow out from there, and just trust that it'll also evolve naturally. And you'll start to be drawn to maybe studying different plants or things as time progresses. But the other thing I would also say is getting practice. Once you get to that level where you feel like, okay, I feel like I've studied a lot on my own, going to study with other herbal teachers or going to schools, like, those are all really, really helpful for giving you a solid foundation. I definitely recommend both having direct experience and relationship with plants, but also really getting solid training to balance your mind and your heart,
Oh my gosh, there is so much incredible information you just shared that for people to get started and really, like, starting simply and taking the pressure off. I think that's the biggest thing, and so that we can connect more deeply. Thank you for all of that. And I feel like so much of that will help us to feed our wild and, like the point of the podcast. And I'm curious, Whitney, right now, what is feeding your wild, whether it's body, mind, or soul?
Yeah. So this is a funny place that, because there's so many different facets to, like, throughout my life, different things that I could share that were really feeding that wildness in me. And this just makes me think about what is wild, and when we think about what is the wild, we think about untamed and maybe undomesticated, right? And there's that aspect to it. But for me, I also think about just something, a being or a plant that's just in its natural habitat of some, that's basically just intact with nature. And so, throughout my life, I've had different times where I was living out in the wild, or I was, just like harvesting wild plants and things like that felt way more rugged and wild. And right now, I would say that even though it doesn't sound like I'm feeding my wild, I'm actually diving into this incredibly domesticated life, which is very much trying to live as simply and closely to the earth as possible, which to me feels like that same thing as far as, like, feeding that wildness is really just, even though it's gardening and, raising animals or and growing medicine and like, I'm spending more time developing gardens around me and herb gardens than I am out wildcrafting these days. But at the core of it, it's like what I'm trying to do is reconnect to an ancestral way of living, or just a way where I'm working with my hands. I'm trying to reclaim some of these old homesteading skills and things like that my grandma grew up doing. And just reclaiming some of this old wisdom around how to actually live on the earth as a human being in a simple and humble and pure way that's basically trying to have a positive impact by also just being as integral as I can. So, eating locally and seasonally and things like that, that's like most of what my life is looking like now, is that I'm actually trying to look at my ecological impact and just trying to look at my life and trying to live it just as congruently as I can with the mission of bringing healing to the earth. So I feel like I'm at this place where I'm trying to take responsibility in that way. And even though it doesn't sound like super wild and rugged, and in the essence, that's what it feels like, is that I'm reconnecting in a way that's living with the earth. Because it's been a long, long, long time since many people have lived in a completely, I guess what we would think of as like a romanticized idea of totally wild,
Mm-hmm.
And even the lands like here, coming to maybe as settlers or colonizers came to North America here, maybe saw First Nations people, what they thought living as wild, but it's really just that they were, from at least the Indigenous elders that have shared things with me, the way that they've explained it is like that they've still had relationship with the land and with the animals and the food and everything, and actually were tending and working with the land, that it wasn't just like they were just living totally wild. And so, or maybe the way that our concept of wild. So I'm like at that place of trying to make my life as seamless as a part of the landscape as possible. And so the way that looks for me is homesteading and tending and caring for the land that I live on, and just trying to do my best with that.
Oh, I love it so much. It reminds me of an Andean mysticism. In that tradition, they speak of sacred reciprocity, and sacred reciprocity with the land, with the cosmos, and us within it. Like, and that's going to change as our world changes. So it's not going to look the same as it did, thousands or even hundreds of years ago. So really looking at redeveloping or reclaiming, as you were saying, that relationship, and what does it look like now in the world that we're living in. Thank you for sharing that. I'm right in it with you with that exploration. And I know you have so much to share. I could speak to you for hours, Whitney. This was amazing. Where can people find you?
Yeah, I just wanted to add one more thing to that too. 'Cause I guess like one practice that I have that is definitely feeds that place of that, like I would say feeds my wild, right? Is waking up with the sun every day. And that, like, since I've been doing that for a number of years now, just that in itself, I go outside and first thing when I wake up, I just watch the sunrise. And it's like this, just having my senses attuned first thing as I'm waking up to the land that's around me, to the birds, to the sun coming up. It just feeds my soul in such a really deep way. And it's something that anyone can do and anyone can connect with. And then it realigns our whole hormonal and cycles and everything. All of our rhythms get shifted back to this original state that human beings are meant to be on, which is living in those rhythms and cycles that we have, as modern human beings, have lost that connection to, with artificial light and with having any type of food at any time of the year. Just those seasonal and daily rhythms and paying attention to them and seeing how we're in relationship to them, I think is so critical. And it's just so simple. It's so simple. Anybody can do it. And so I just really want to encourage that as well and share that as just a basic practice that I do every day that feeds my wild soul.
Love it. Yes.
Yeah. So, my husband Sage and I, we have created the School of Evolutionary Herbalism, and you can find us online there at evolutionaryherbalism.com. And we have we have like 6 different online programs there, and we have a blog of different things that we put up there from time to time, and put together different free trainings and courses at different points of the year as well. And yes, you can find us there. And then we also have a product line of different herbal remedies that we prepare according to the tradition of alchemy from Europe, which is a really profound, beautiful tradition of preparing herbal remedies that involves astrology and things like that. So that is organic-unity.com for that.
Beautiful. And I'm going to have all the links in the show notes. And Whitney is also offering a free issue of their subscription program, Materia Medica Monthly. You guys, this is like really incredible stuff that they have in their Materia Medica. I like the amount of content that you guys give for free is astounding to me. It's so amazing. And so I highly recommend everybody check that out. I'll have all the links in the show notes. Whitney, it's been beyond a pleasure having you on. I'm just so excited for everything you talked about and for everything you guys are doing. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Vanessa. Yeah, thank you again for having me on here today. And it's just, it was just really an honor and pleasure to just get to explore these conversations together, and hope that it really serves your community well.
Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode or any other episodes, please share with a friend and leave us a review. Your feedback means the world to us. I want to hear how you are feeding your wild. Give us a shout out on iTunes or reach me on Instagram at wildlyrooted. See you next time.